Hey guys, so I'm going to show you how to use base 10 blocks to represent decimals. But first we kind of need to clear our brains of what we know about base 10 blocks because we're going to change the rules a little bit. Now that we're using decimals, we're going to kind of go to a new place. Let's call it like decimal land. Okay, and in decimal land, these rules for base 10 blocks are going to be different than everything that you've ever learned. Because I know in third grade, second grade, first grade, kindergarten, you use these to represent whole numbers. So you'd use a flat to represent 100, right? A rod would be 10, and a unit cube would be 1. That's what you guys have learned in the past. So if I like put this out, I'm just putting a random number out, right? You would use this in third grade, and second grade, first grade, you'd say 123. But here in fourth grade, when we're talking about decimals, we're going to change the rules when we go to decimal world, and we're going to change the rules, and I'll explain why. So instead of using this flat to represent 100, we're going to use this flat to represent one whole. So think about like $1, one whole. It's representative just this one piece. So like this would be two wholes. This would be three wholes. So we're going to use a flat to represent one whole. We're going to use these rods to represent one of our new place value pieces called a tenth. Now, you might be asking, well, why are we using these rods to represent a tenth? And I want to ask you something here. So if I'm using these to represent a tenth, how many of these rods would I need to make up one whole? Well, if we know anything about base 10 blocks, we should know that we would need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them to make up one whole. Look, fits right on top. So I need 10 of these to equal a whole. So it's 1/10, right? 1/10 of the whole. So this would be 2/10, 3/10, 4/10. This is why they're called tenths, because it would take 10 of them to equal the whole piece that I have right here, one whole. Now these are called what? Hundredths. Why do you think these are called hundredths? Well, how many unit cubes, how many of these would it take to make up a whole? Well, if I counted all of these, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. It will take 100 of these unit cubes to make up the whole, which is why this is called, these are going to be called hundredths. So we're going to use these to represent hundredths. Now, if I just start kind of counting here, so if I'm going to say this is 100th, 200ths, 300ths, 400ths, 500ths, 600ths, 700ths, 800ths, 900ths. So I'm going to pause right there and say, all right, well down here, if I have 900ths, what happens when I add one more? So this is 10 hundredths. Now, I can't fit 10 in any place value spot, even including the decimal ones, right? I can't do 10 hundredths. So I would put the 1 here and the 0 here. Look, 10 hundredths is the same as 1/10. You see my 1/10 piece I have right here? 1/10 was the same as when I had 10 hundredths. So these are going to be my hundredths. Let's say if I had a lot of hundredths, right? Look, that's tenths. That's 2/10. This is 3/10. 4/10. Okay, you get the picture. 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10, 9/10 would be written like this. What happens when I add the last tenth? It's the same rule like we have for place value. So that's 10/10, right? I can't fit 10/10 in here. So I move the 1 over. So 10/10 is the same as one whole. So here's my one whole. It's the same size. 10 tenths is the same as 1 whole here. So we're going to use these to represent decimals. I'm going to kind of slide them off to the side right here. So if you'll notice, down at the bottom I have some blanks and I have my decimal spot right here. So I want to just plug in some numbers. So let's say I have 1 and 23 hundredths. So it's written like this, 1.23, or like it looks like this. Right, 1 and 23 hundredths, 1 and 23 hundredths. I want to model that. So I'm going to say, okay, well, how many ones do I have? I just need 1, 1. So I'm going to put 1, 1 out there. How many tenths do I have? Okay, I have 2 tenths. So I'm going to say 1 tenth, 2 tenths. And then how many hundredths do I have? I need 3 hundredths. So that's 100th, 200ths, and 300ths. So the way I would pronounce this is I have 1 whole, and I can just combine. I could say 2 tenths, 3 hundredths, or I could say 1 and 23 hundredths. Because if I did slide these together, right, this whole number is 23. I can just read the number like this, 23. 23 what? Well, I don't have 23 tenths, all right? I only have 2 of those. But I do have 23 hundredths. If I sat here and counted them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. So I do have 23 hundredths. So this is 1 whole and 23 hundredths would look like this. Let's try another one. This is what you guys are going to be practicing using the Google slide on the next page. All right, well, let's say, I'm just going to write a number on here and I'll show you how to fill it in. Let's say I have 2 and 205 looks like this decimal. So I have 2 ones, 0 tens, 5 hundredths. I'm just going to write that down here. 2 ones, 0 tenths, and 5 hundredths. Well, let's build it first, okay? So here I have 1, 1. I need another one. So there's 2 ones. How many tenths do I need? 0. How many hundredths do I need? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 hundredths. So this is what 2 tenths, sorry, not 2 tenths. This is what 2 wholes and 5 hundredths would look like. And the way you pronounce it, I would say 2 and 5 hundredths. Whenever you see the decimal point, you say the word and when you're reading it. So I won't say 2.05. When you see that decimal, you say the word and when you're pronouncing it. 2 and 5 hundredths. Okay, let's try one more before you guys get started and get to work on the Google slide sheet next, on the next page. All right, so let's say I have 3 and 4 tenths. I'm going to leave that 3 and 4 tenths. So I'm going to plug in my number where my decimal, so line up the place value. So 3 is in the ones place, 4 is in the tenths place. Do I have any hundredths? I don't have any hundredths. So let's go ahead and build this one. So I need 3 ones. So 1, 2, 3. There's my 3 ones. How many tenths? Looks like 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now there are 2 ways you can actually say this number. So we can pronounce it 3 and 4 tenths. But I also could pronounce this using hundredths. I want to know, well, how many hundredths is in this 4 tenths? Right? Well, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there's 10, 20, 30, 40 hundredths. Or I could fill in, do I have any hundredths? I have 0 hundredths. But I could say 3 and 4 tenths if it's written like this. or I could pronounce it 3 and 40 hundredths. Because I do have 40 of these little tiny guys, would be, if I counted them all, would be 40 hundredths, would make up my 4/10. So that's what you're going to do there. Okay, so you're going to be practicing this on the next page. You're going to be using virtual base 10 blocks. I put some instructions in the Google slide. So like the second page gives you instructions on what you're supposed to do. There's a video, so you need to click and watch that, and it will explain what you're going to be doing. But basically, you're just going to be rolling these virtual dice to fill in these spots. So you'll fill in, let me go back here. You'll roll the dice and fill in these 3 spots, and then you'll build your own using the virtual base 10 blocks. And then you'll do that 5 different times. And then you'll have some questions to answer after that. So I hope that makes sense. We're going to practice it tomorrow as well. But remember, we're in decimal world. This is no longer 100. We're using this to represent 1 whole. So this is a solid 1 whole. This would be 2 wholes, right? These are 3 wholes. And you can keep going, right? I just ran out of pieces, right? 4 wholes. So these are whole numbers. And then we are now using these to represent our tenths. And then our unit cubes are now representing our hundredths. So I want to look at the place value chart one last time before you guys get started, and then we'll keep going. You guys will get going, all right? So here it is again. So we had our ones, and we learned a new one. So we had tenths and hundredths. So like the one we just did, 3 and 4/10, right? There's 3 ones. So I'd line it up, put the 3 here. Make sure I put my decimal. 4/10. So we just did that one, right? It would have been 3 wholes right here, and then 4/10, just like this. 3 wholes, 4/10, or I could fill in this 0 and say 40 hundredths. Either way is totally fine. So that's what we're learning today. We're going to practice this some more tomorrow too. Good luck. Let me or Mr. Johnson know if you have any questions.